Hi, this is PD at BurgZerg Arcade at BurgZergArcade.com, and this is the continuation of our last tutorial. So let's go ahead and open up Unity and mono develop. Now we left off, we had just added the buttons to our inventory, but we're also going to want some way to distinguish between items in our inventory and basically empty inventory slots. Now visually we're going to be using GUI skins. We've already gone over that, how you set up a GUI skin, or if you just want to use GUI styles, you can do that as well. But as far as actually displaying the items in game, I want the actual items to be buttons, and if they're not a button, well, I don't want them. If it's not an item, I don't want it to be a button. So we'll just use a label, and we'll just apply a different skin to it. So let's set that functionality up now. I'm going to come back down into our inventory window function, and I'm going to set another variable here, and it's going to be of type int, and I'm just going to call it CNT for counter, and I'll just start it off at 0. Now right after our second loop, and before we actually implement the visualization for the button, I'm going to add an if block. So I'll just quickly template that out. And what we're going to want to check is to see if CNT is less than, then we're going to want to check to see how many items are actually in our inventory. And since we made it static, we can now access it by doing player character dot inventory. Remember, this returns our actual inventory to us. And we'll just do dot count. Not clear, we want count. So what we're saying is if our current counter is less than the number of items in our inventory, we're going to create a button for it. Then later on we're actually going to tie the button into it. But if it's not, then I'm going to do the exact same thing, except now I'm going to use a GUI label, and everything's the same. At the end here I am going to add a GUI style here, and the style I'm going to use is just the default box till I actually get my graphics set up. And this should give a bit of, well, basically visualization of what's actually an item and what's not. So when we start this up, it should all look like boxes now inside of our inventory. And there you go. They're no longer clickable, and you can drag just by having your mouse on them. And, well, of course, holding down. So we'll head back into mono develop. And actually, there's one thing I forgot to do here. And that's actually increase our counter, so that the counter actually keeps increasing, or it's always going to be comparing it to 0. So now let's start implementing a way that we can actually click on the item from the loot chest and add it to our inventory. So I'm going to come up to, let me see, here's our loot window where we go through, and right here's where we're removing it. Now before we remove it, let's add it to our inventory. So player character dot inventory dot add, and the item we want to add is the chest dot loot, and then the index, which is CNT. And I forgot my closing parentheses. We'll save that off, and let's just go test it out. So I hit play. I'm going to have to run up to a chest. I'll open it up. And let's start adding. There we go. Now we should actually display the actual name from the item now that we have stuff actually going into our inventory. So that's pretty easy to implement. We'll just go into mono develop. Head down to our inventory window, and where we're displaying the number here, we can actually change that to player character, not camera, we want character, dot inventory, and then the index. And we want the name of it. So we'll go back in, we'll give that a little whirl, see what happens. So it starts up, we'll go up, we'll click a chest, and the first item in the chest is I-49, so we'll click it, and there it is. It's now in our inventory. 33, 58, 40, 82, and it closes and gets destroyed. Now we actually haven't done anything with the buttons up here. Let's stop that. And before I start going any further with the inventory, I actually want to start playing around with our item generator so we have some real items to play with. So I'm going to call this one done, and I'll see you in the next one where we start playing around with our random item generator. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.